Testing? Testing? Okay. Good evening. My name is Michaela Jones, and I'm a senior at Potomac High School. I've participated in volunteer work at DC Central Kitchen, several Special Olympic events in Fairfax County, and also have taken advanced placement classes over my 4-year tenure at Potomac High School, including being a member of National Honor Society for 3 years in dance while maintaining a GPA of 3.7 or higher. I enjoy giving back. I'm a nominee of my senior yearbook for Most Involved. My long-term goal is to become a 4-year graduate of North Carolina A&T and to become a sociologist. Thank you. I'm a proud senior at Potomac High School, and I am ready for college. Now I want to welcome you to the February 22nd, 2018 Prince George's County Board of Education meeting. Highlights this evening will include the news break, legislative kudos. Additionally, under the consent agenda, the Board of Education will adopt the following proclamations. Proclamation for observation of Read Across America Day, March 2nd, 2018. Proclamation for Prince George's County History Day competition, March 10th, 2018. Proclamation for observation of National Women's History Month, March 2018. Proclamation for observation of National Irish American Heritage Month, March 2018. And lastly, Prince George's County Public Schools Mental Health Initiative. Please continue to check www.pgcps.org for upcoming Board of Education meetings and events. And now, the February 22nd, 2018 Board of Education meeting will begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, colleagues and citizens. Welcome to the February 22nd, 2018 board meeting of the Prince George's County Board of Education. How about another round of applause for Michaela Jones of Potomac High School? I was talking to Michaela and her proud mom just now. She noted her goal is to graduate from North Carolina A&T. She made it toward that goal today when she got her acceptance letter for A&T just today. All right. She did mention that that's her first choice, but she's got a lot more irons in the fire, so we'll see what happens next semester. But either way, I'm sure you'll be tremendously successful. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you to the staff and leadership at Potomac High School for the great work that they do every day. Before we begin formally for our meeting, I'll remind everyone to please turn off your wireless communication devices as they may interfere with the microphone and taping of the meetings. And I will ask, please, Mr. Wallace to lead us in the board prayer and pledge of allegiance. Please stand.
O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Steer us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Mrs. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Certainly, sir. Good evening, board members. Good evening. Ms. Ahmed.
Here.
Ms. Boston. Present. Mr. Burrows. Aye. Ms. Eubanks.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez.
Present.
Mr. Murray.
Present.
Ms. Page.
Present.
Ms. Quintero-Scrady.
Present.
Ms. Roach.
Present.
Mr. Valentine. Here. Mr. Wallace.
Present.
Ms. Williams. Dr. Wiseman. Present. Dr. Eubanks.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Colleagues, may I please have a motion to adopt the February 22nd, 2018 board meeting agenda? So moved. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. We have adopted the agenda. Colleagues, may I please have a motion to approve the January 23rd, 2018, January 30, 2018, and February 6, 2018 budget work sessions and budget public hearings for the FY 2019 budget and the February 1, 2018 board meeting minutes. It's been moved and seconded to approve this group of minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We'll now entertain a news break entitled Legislative Kudos.
Whether they were showing off their prize-winning apps to a congressman or being lauded for their civic skills inside Maryland State House, Prince George's students were the recent recipients of some very well-deserved legislative kudos. Winning 4 out of the 5 top prizes in the 5th Congressional District's Congressional App Challenge, a national competition now in its 4th year. The talented quartet at Gwynn Park High School coded its way to success with apps for everything from autistic emotions to a game of breakball.
Mr. Bryce told us about the Congressional App Challenge. I wasn't ready at all. I wasn't prepared because we only had almost 3 days to make the app. Had to work on some of it at home. So when I made my app, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna win. It's a game. Somebody might do something that's a lot better than mine. So, I doubted myself, but then Mr. Bryce told me I won, and, I was happy. Felt good.
It's all over your face, yeah. Both Keith Bryce, who worked in IT before becoming Gwynn Park's favorite teacher, and Congressman Steny Hoyer know exactly how software design application is hard currency in today's job market.
Hey guys, when I did this, and I worked as a computer technician, when I was a programmer, when I did networking, I did this for a living, so I know the pitfalls that you're going to have, I know those wonderful things that you're going to hit throughout your career, and I'm able to give you that personal insight from what I've already done.
And the world has evolved so quickly, and technology has become the central economic development issue in the world. And this, of course, competition is to incentivize them for doing just that.
And just as Capitol Hill acknowledged Prince George's coding celebrities, so too did Maryland's Speaker of the House praise our current student pages. The Prince George's pages, who spent 2 non-consecutive weeks in Annapolis getting to know how state government really works, got a special lesson from Delegate Jazz Lewis, a Flowers High School graduate, assistant to Congressman Hoyer.
So I have this amazing experience where I get to drive in the morning to the Capitol in D.C., and then when I get off of work, I drive from the U.S. Capitol to the state Capitol.
A crusader for justice and a former page himself.
When you have tens of thousands, if not millions of people tweeting for someone's resignation because they did something, whether it was sexual assault or something otherwise, showing that this is where community stands, that makes a statement.
I was telling them that they should follow their feet. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think, this is a great experience. It was a start for me. It can be the start for them. And that they should know that whatever they end up doing, government, public service, should be something they consider.
Delegate Lewis's easy manner and deep commitment disabused the students.
All right, folks, we don't want these young people's accomplishments to be lost, so we're going to start all over.
I have no idea how you did that.
Whether they were showing off their prize-winning apps to a congressman or being lauded for their civic skills inside Maryland State House, Prince George's students were the recent recipients of some very well-deserved legislative kudos. winning 4 out of the 5 top prizes in the 5th Congressional District's Congressional App Challenge, a national competition now in its 4th year. The talented quartet at Gwynn Park High School coded its way to success with apt apps for everything from autistic emotions to a game of breakball.
Mr. Bryce told us about the Congressional App Challenge. I wasn't ready at all. I wasn't prepared because we only had almost 3 days to make the app. Had to work on some of it at home. So when I made my app, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna win. It's a game. Somebody might do something that's a lot better than mine. So I doubted myself, but then Mr. Bryce told me I won, and I was happy, felt good.
It's all over your face, yeah, yeah.
Both Keith Bryce, who worked in IT before becoming Gwynn Park's favorite teacher, and Congressman Steny Hoyer know exactly how software design application is hard currency in today's job market.
Hey guys, when I did this, and I worked as a computer technician, when I was a programmer, when I did networking, I did this for a living, so I know the pitfalls that you're going to have. I know those wonderful things that you're going to hit throughout your career, and I'm able to give you that personal insight from what I've already done.
And the world has evolved so quickly, and technology has become the central economic development issue in the world. And this, of course, competition is to incentivize them for doing just that.
And just as Capitol Hill acknowledged Prince George's coding celebrities, so too did Maryland's Speaker of the House praise our current student pages. The Prince George's pages, who spend 2 non-consecutive weeks in Annapolis getting to know how state government really works, got a special lesson from Delegate Jazz Lewis, a Flowers High School graduate, assistant to Congressman Hoyer.
So I have this amazing experience where I get to drive in the morning to the Capitol in D.C., and then when I get off of work, I drive from the U.S. Capitol to the state Capitol.
A crusader for justice and a former page himself.
When you have tens of thousands, if not millions of people tweeting for someone's resignation because they did something, whether it was sexual assault or something otherwise, showing that this is where the community stands, that makes a statement.
I was telling them that they should follow their feet. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think this is a great experience. It was a start for me. It can be the start for them, and that they should know that whatever they end up doing, government, public service, should be something they consider.
Delegate Lewis's easy manner and deep commitment disabused the students of some of their notions about politicians and inspired them, perhaps, to follow in Lewis's footsteps.
What has surprised you?
A bit of an eye-opening experience. I mean, I thought it was going to be more snooty and uptight here, but it seemed more of like a, how do I put it, a high school cafeteria.
As a SGA secretary and the PGRAS secretary, it really opened my eyes up, and it showed me that I can make a difference and be an activist to all the people in my community. So coming here and meeting all the delegates and the senators, it made me want to follow in their footsteps and make a change in Prince George's County and even for the state. My favorite thing thus far has been speaking to the delegates, and they don't want us to look at them as like these important people. They're like, just call me by my first name. I'm like, no, you're important to me and I look up to you, and they're just like normal people.
And it's not just career epiphanies that can happen as the gray blazered pages make coffee and pass out papers. They can also make friends, some that can be very special friends indeed.
Sometimes there are even romances. I knew of one family where they met as pages down here and they got married many years later. So anything can happen, but they're the cream of the crop. They're the best and the brightest of the whole state that come down here to do this. And we're just so proud of the ones that come here from Prince George's County. Wish there were more of them.
But whether they tie the marital knot or come back as politicians themselves, the consensus is that the Prince George's pages are exceptional youngsters destined to make a difference.
Have you met any who you think one day they may take my place because they're really good at what they do?
Well, I can say that all of them would qualify because they're just that good. Yeah. And I can tell you that most of them would make absolutely great delegates and senators.
Yeah. So we would be represented well with this next generation, you're saying?
We certainly do, and I put all my hope in them.
If I had the power, I would want to make sure that every student in all over the state has like equality in health care and that they're comfortable living, especially with the foreigners, I guess, that come over. I know they don't feel comfortable coming to school or getting health care, and that really hurts me because my school has a huge ESOL population, and a lot of them are starting to drop out of school, and that's really affecting me because I've made like relationships and friendships with them, and I want them to feel comfortable with that.
Our thanks to the students at Gwynn Park, Oxon Hill, and Central High Schools for their skills and unselfish service. Our state and our country will be better places because of them. This is Dave Zarin reporting.
Thank you for that great report. Thank you all for your patience as we work through the technical issues, and I hope you found it worthwhile in highlighting not only our students from Gwynn Park, Oxon Hill Central, and Potomac High School who are here. And so you see this greatness all throughout this county, and we demonstrate that every day. So thank you so much for that report. And I will now move on to the chair's report. I will begin this evening, as I often do, in honoring the lives of those we have lost. I want to give special honor and recognition to Mrs. Sharon L. Weaver, an educator at Dr. Henry A. Wise Jr. High School. We just learned today that Mrs. Weaver passed away. Additionally, I honor the life and heroism of Colonel Mujahid Ramzadin, fallen Prince George's County police officer who tragically lost his life doing what he was sworn to do on and off duty, protecting our community. Whenever we lose members of our community, our heart breaks and goes out to the many students, colleagues, staff, parents, and families whose lives were touched and impacted in such a major way. I honor not only those locally, but we know in the wake of the tragic events in Florida recently, that issues of safe and supportive environments are certainly at the top of our hearts and our minds as we do our work each day here in Prince George's County. We want our community to know that Prince George's County Board of Education, its administration, in collaboration with our law enforcement and community partners, will continue prioritizing student and staff safety in our schools, offices, and centers. We'll continue to analyze our safety policies and resources in the days and weeks ahead. We know that strengthening school security requires ongoing reviews and upgrading and training, and it requires ongoing vigilance, open dialogue, and strong support. We know, more importantly, it requires the love and commitment, engagement with all of our members of community, and we will continue on that path. I will at this time ask us to join in a moment of silence to remember the beautiful and meaningful lives of Mrs. Weaver, Corporal Ramzadin, along with the lives of those lost in the senseless tragedy in Broward County Public Schools. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We hope that each of you continues to keep these families in your thoughts and prayers. A couple of other notes about what's going on in our system. We're excited to say that on February 13th, Prince George's County Public Schools launched a new online customer service tool called Let's Talk. This tool is designed to better connect parents and community members to the many services we provide in our school system. By improving service to our communities, we hope to increase public trust in the system, contributing to better outcomes for all students. If you haven't checked out our Let's Talk website, I think it's one of the coolest things that we've done in a long time, and I think that it can and will dramatically improve the way that we help to solve the problems and challenges that our students and our families bring to us. So please do look at the Let's Talk tab on the very top of your homepage. Finally, let me say before I give pass the mic over to my colleague, folks may notice a couple of my colleagues have commented that I'm feeling kind of Wakandan this evening. And I have captured that spirit of what Wakanda is all about. I'm sure I, like so many of you, have already gone to see the Black Panther movie. Yes, I did wear my garb. My wife and I, we represented at the Magic Johnson Theater this Sunday, and it was a tremendously powerful experience. But, you know, given that this is Black History Month, it also made me reflect. You know, folks who don't know any better, they think about Wakanda as this mystical, magical, make-believe place, which, of course, in the comic book world it is. But if you know about the history of Africa and the history of the ancient civilizations of what Africa represented, you'll know that just like Wakanda, there was a lot of time in human history when civilizations of Africa indeed were the cultural and technological and intellectual capitals of the world. The ancient civilizations of Kush and of Egypt that we know so well, but also the ancient civilizations of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, which were the leaders of the world, in which so many of us, when we look at the movies, think that it's make-believe and it's actually so real and so powerful. And I'll just say, you know, the name Musa that means so much to me and my family. My dad's name is Musa. My brother's name is Musa. My nephew's name is Musa. So while Musa is indeed a religious name, it means Moses, it also represents Mansa Musa, the king of the ancient civilization of Mali, who is still known to this day as the richest king in history. And he led the great civilization of Mali and was known when he took his pilgrimage from Mali to Mecca to make his Hajj for the religion of Islam. He carried with him 60,000 men and so much gold that he devalued currency across the continent for 10 years. So when you really think about what we've done and what we've accomplished, how important it is for us in our schools, particularly given the incredibly diverse population we have of African-American, Latino kids from all across the diaspora, how important it is to bring this kind of history into our schools. I should note, I was really hoping to have a group called Kimsha, which is a young people's group that celebrates African-American history, with us today. They'll be with us at the next board meeting that talks about that and give them special recognition to really think about our history. So yes, this dashiki is about Black Panther, but for many of us, it's about so much more than that. So please remember that when you see your colleagues and friends wearing this traditional clothing. And with that, I will stop and yield the floor to my colleague, Ms. Quinteros-Grady, for a point of personal privilege. I'm going to let her do her thing.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening. I have the privilege to present a couple of awards to 3 schools from the Alliance. This is the Alliance for Healthier Generation Landmark presentation. I'd like to first acknowledge a couple of attendees. We have the Mayor of Greenbelt, Emmett Jordan, with us, Councilwoman Silky Pope, and Councilmember Councilmember Colin Bird to join us as well. And special recognition to Dr. Deborah Archer, who is part of the Wellness Council, representing tonight. She is the Prince George's project leader for Food Supplement Nutrition Education, also known as SNAP Ed. Thank you to the principals who are joining us as well. Principal of Robert Gray, Cheryl Franklin, Principal of Spring Hill Lake, Natasha Jenkins, and Principal of Buck Lodge, Kenneth Nance. So the Wellness Council has come about for about a year and a half now, and I am the board rep that sits in that council. Tonight, Dr. Maxwell, the Wellness Council led by Dr. Adrian Talley, Executive Director of Student Support Services, and I are ecstatic to the three Prince George's County Public Schools who have been nationally recognized by the Alliance for Healthy Generation Landmark for 2017 through 2019. These three schools, listen to this, are a part of 323 schools that were recognized for this great honor. Out of 4 schools recognized in Maryland, Prince George's County Public Schools had 3 honored. Each recognized school participates in Healthier Generations Landmark Healthy Schools program, one of the nation's largest school-based childhood obesity prevention initiative. The program has worked with more than 35,000 schools, serving over 20 million students since 2006. Schools earn this distinction by successfully meeting a rigorous set of criteria for serving healthier meals and snacks, getting students moving more, offering high-quality physical and health education, and empowering school leaders to become healthy role models. Partnering with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation is our very own Wellness Council. The Wellness Council is charged with studying policies, practices, and procedures related to the school health program, and to make recommendations to the Superintendent CEO of Schools and the Prince George's County Health Officer. The Wellness Council is represented by Physical and Health Education, Food Services, Psychological Services, Office of School Health, Prince George's County Health Department, Prince George's County of Parks and Recreation, University of Maryland, parents, and Prince George's County Board of Education member. The Wellness Council has done phenomenal work within the county and are continuing to make major strides in identifying community health resource, promotion of cooperation among Prince George's County Health Department, Prince George's County Public Schools, and other agencies, including private partnerships. So we are very happy and privileged today to recognize and honor 3 of the leading schools, the way for a healthy generation in our community. Spring Hill Lake Elementary, like I mentioned, Robert Gray Elementary, and Buck Lodge Middle School. So if you all could come up, I'd like to present you with the awards. School by school. Sorry, so we'll have Spring Hill Lake can go first. So we'll go that, and then everyone to the side, and then you get the board members and everyone, and then we'll have the 2 other schools. You should be in the picture. We'll have
All right, thank you for that. And thank you for your great contributions. Upcoming meetings and announcements. March 8th, 2018 is a board work session at 5 p.m. March 20th, 2018 is a board meeting at 7 p.m. Those meetings will be here at the Sasser building here in the boardroom. Persons interested in speaking at that meetings of the board must register with the board office at the Board of Education 2.5 hours prior to the meeting by calling 301-952-6115. And that concludes my chair's remarks. I'll leave it. You have an announcement?
Well, basically, you spoke about Wakanda, and I just had a point of personal privilege that'll take 30 seconds. I think it's easy to talk about the Black Panther film and the mystical place as this far-off place, and we talk about our heritage as this distant past. And when you were speaking, I am reminded that we could use those same principles here today in Prince George's County Public Schools. When it comes time to determine whether or not to put math and reading specialists in our lowest performing schools, that's something that we can determine as a board. When it comes time to determine, Dr. Maxwell, if it's more important to educate our students, not just graduate them, that is something that we could determine as a board.
I appreciate your point of personal privilege, but I'm not going to allow you to engage in debate,
I'm not
my friend.
debating. You gave a long diatribe about a film,
I'm sorry.
and all I'm
I
simply saying...
I had my board's report, but please keep it general and not about issues before the board. That's not what a point of personal privilege is. I'm not going to allow it, Mr.
Okay.
Mr.
I mean,
Burrows.
you spoke at length about a movie, and I guess to close, I think it's easy to talk about the film and not think about properly compensating our employees or mold at our poorest
Once again,
schools,
Mr. Burrows,
or lead
I'm
in the
not going to allow you to talk about issues in front of the school.
In the
That's not a
future,
point
I
of
will
personal
object
privilege.
if you start talking about mystical films.
Please do feel free to object. Please do
And
feel
not
free
about
to
the issues
object
that
about my board report. But that's not what this issue is about, and I'm not going to allow you to debate on issues. In fact, you'll be able to say all these things when it comes time to the budget, because that's when the appropriate time to do so. So you have plenty of time to do that. Thank you. I'll yield the floor now to Dr. Maxwell for the report by the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good evening. Following the tragic shooting to which you referred in your report in Broward County, Florida, students across the nation are speaking up, discussing the incident on social media, and exercising their right to advocacy around the issue of gun control. They remind us that we must remain ever vigilant in our mission to provide a safe school environment for our children. Please know that we continue to work with our security office staff, law enforcement partners, professional school counselors, and all of our staff to improve school security and identify students who may need additional support. If you would like to help the victims and their families from Florida through a donation, you can visit the Broward Education Foundation website. We also invite you to help recognize outstanding employees. We are currently accepting nominations for our highest award for teachers, the Teacher of the Year Award, as well as Outstanding Employee Awards. Nomination details are available on our website. Next Friday, March 2nd, is Read Across America Day, a reading celebration that takes place each year on Dr. Seuss's birthday. Thousands of schools, libraries, and communities will host events that encourage children to read. This year, as part of our Giving Together campaign, our business and community partnerships team will host a Stuff a Bus event on February 24th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Bowie Town Center. Please bring a new book to donate to students in need or purchase one on site from the event partner, Barnes & Nobles. Mr. Chair, members of the board, this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. I'll now yield the floor to Mary Kingston Roach, Chair of the Academic Achievement Committee, for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to start out by recognizing fellow committee members, and that would be Ms. Sonia Williams, Vice Chair, Lupe Quinteros Grady, Donna Wiseman, Patricia Eubanks, and Amanya Page. and thank all of them for their participation this year, as well as thank our administration liaison, Dr. Monica Goldson, Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. And our main goal with the committee is really to inform and influence the administration's strategy and actions around teaching and learning to increase student achievement and provide an equitable and excellent education for all students. This year, we see a lot of great current initiatives going on, so we're trying to balance understanding and strengthening those initiatives. At the same time, we promote innovation that can take our students and our school system to the next level. So the current initiatives that we've learned more about and have offered suggestions to take it to the next level are things like cultural responsiveness and some sensitivity training for PGCPS employees, the equity task force work that is continuing, and our plans to address our achievement gaps, especially for the two largest gaps in our system, which is students in special education and English language learners. You will see in board docs a work plan that we drafted at the beginning of the year to kind of guide our work for different topics. You will see a combination of looking at academic data as well as looking at things like school discipline and school safety, all that impact student learning. This is a guide, though it's flexible as we learn about new priorities or things that are urgent. So an example is when the graduation rate audit report came out, we focused our November meeting exclusively on the findings to discuss how we could ensure that all of our students graduate college and career ready moving forward. And we'll continue to keep this topic on our committee agenda going forward as a standing item. Wanted to highlight a few achievements from the committee this year so far. We have worked with the administration to develop a guide from PGCPS for high school students on preparing for college with specific steps and tools to assist them in the process. This guide will be released shortly to all high schools, and counselors will be encouraged to promote it. We have worked with the administration to create and send a survey to teachers who work with literacy coaches to determine teacher views of the impact of literacy coaches on their instruction. We'll receive these survey results in May, and this will inform our investment and our approach to our coaching model in schools. And we've worked to create and send a survey to school counselors to get a better sense of their workload and their responsibilities to also inform how we can better support them. A few things coming up this year that we're excited to discuss. Our approach in general to program evaluation. So we want to gain a better understanding of how we evaluate programs, specifically academic programs, and discuss how to standardize a process for consistent evaluations that informs our investment in practice. Reforming school discipline, how do we continue as a system to move away from punitive discipline practices toward positive practices like restorative practices, and working with the communications department to launch a series of videos highlighting neighborhood schools to share the exciting and innovative programming they're doing and the accomplishments of our talented students, staff, and communities. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Roach, for that report. Again, that report is also online in board docs for folks to review. And I'll now yield the floor to our General Counsel, Shauna Battle, for an overview of the legislative report. Ms. Battle.
Good evening. Demetria Tobias has been representing you in Annapolis for the entire legislative session. She couldn't be here tonight because her husband and two daughters have flu. So I would respectfully ask that you not ask me a whole lot of questions that I can't answer. The policy committee recommended that 4 bills come before you tonight. The first one is House Bill 1438, Senate Bill 332, Prince George's County School Construction Master Plan Work Group. This bill establishes a work group with representatives from the Senate, House, County Council, and school system to make recommendations regarding the county's educational facilities master plan. The work group would report by December 2018 on recommendations regarding options to meet identified needs at lower costs, methods to improve the maintenance and rehabilitation of public schools in Prince George's County, and options to increase cost sharing. The committee took no position on this bill. Senate Bill 779, Prince George's County Education Trust Fund use of funds. The committee recommended opposition of this bill. This bill will alter the funding formula for direct education aid to schools through the Education Trust Fund. Based on our calculation, The bill would provide an additional $108 million in funds for Prince George's County Public Schools, but the reason for the opposition is because it takes the money from the community colleges and the and other sister agencies. So, Senate Bill 477, House Bill 677 is the Public Information Act, required denials, physical addresses, email addresses, and telephone numbers. The committee recommended support of this bill. This bill would allow us to protect the physical address, email addresses, and telephone numbers of individuals who work for us. If it was requested through an MPIA, it would also protect the information of those people who sign up with us for Gov delivery. Under existing law, the only way to shield this information would be for us to go to court and seek a court order. Finally, House Bill 351 is the Protect Our Students Act of 2018. The committee recommended opposing this bill. This bill is one of the governor's main education initiatives, and it will require student test scores to count for 80% rather than 65% of the state's accountability plan under the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. Under ESSA, each state must have a consolidated state plan that requires accountability based on performance or various academic indicators, such as proficiency on assessments. And the accountability plan must help to identify which schools are in need of comprehensive or targeted support and improvement. The maximum 65% weight for student test scores was approved by the General Assembly in 2017 after months of deliberation. The state submitted its plan, which was approved by the U.S. Department of Education in January of 2018. MABE, PZAM, MSEA, and several other education stakeholders have also urged opposition to this bill. And those are the recommendations from your policy committee.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor to the chair of the policy committee if you want to add anything and or make a motion.
I have no further comment. I think Ms. Battle summarized the recommendations and the justification for those recommendations, so I would make a motion to accept the recommendations of the policy committee.
May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Shauna.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Battle, for filling in. My colleagues on the policy committee know that I always get kind of uneasy when it comes to the legislative report, and I've been doing some thinking, and I think I know why. I think we take a lot of positions on a lot of bills, and I don't think we need to. I think we need to support the bills that we want to support and oppose the bills that we want to oppose, and we don't necessarily need to get caught up in the dozens and hundreds of bills that come through. And so that's a conversation that can happen in the policy committee, but I wanted to put that out there as we're voting for this, because I've always been in this position of being uneasy about the legislative report, and I think now I finally understood that it lies with just the massive amount of bills and the fact that we don't need to do as much as we're doing when it comes to taking positions, in my opinion. So there's that.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend the motion to for the board to support the first bill, HB 1438, Senate Bill 332, School Construction Master Plan Work Group.
Second.
The amendment is to move from
no position.
From no position to support. It's been seconded. You want to speak to your motion?
Sure. This bill has been introduced by Senator Rosepap, and basically it seeks to bring together different stakeholders to review what the school system is doing around school construction. I think that in a lot of ways we could bring down school construction costs. We could build schools more efficiently, more cheaply, and put students in the new facilities that they desperately need. And so I think this work group just brings together different stakeholders that can help us find solutions to those questions. And so I don't see any reason why the board would not welcome that work group.
Thank you. Does Ms. Battle or Mr. Valentine want to speak to what was the committee's thoughts on this?
Well, I think it gets back to sort of when we as a committee, when we're reviewing bills, we do that based on a number of things. One being our legislative platform, two being the legislative platform of the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. And one of the overarching principles is that local issues are of local responsibility. At this point in time, we took a no position because there was some disagreement within the committee, but we also understand that there are different iterations of the bill that could potentially come back to us at another time after it's been amended or otherwise. That being said, I would not be against having the board take a up or down vote on it if it's the will of the board.
Thank you. Ms. Quinteros-Grady.
I believe that we've been in communication with Senator Rosapep, and was there something that we were waiting for?
There's an amendment pending right now.
Yeah, I believe that it wasn't that we don't want to support. I think there was something else that was in the work, correct? And
yes.
It was.
So there's several bills out there. HB 195 is the one that we are actually working on the amendments with. This is a different bill.
Can you explain the difference between the two?
So Senator Rosapep has a bill out, HB 195, that's focused on providing incentives for school districts to lower the cost of construction. We've been working with him, it's Prince George's delegation, and we have taken 3 amendments to the bill, and I spoke to him today. And we're moving forward with that we support that bill.
And for the record, I think we voted to support that with amendments already, that bill.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
Okay. This bill is based upon the Educational Facilities Master Plan, the 20-year plan that we just completed a couple years ago, to go back and review that. So this is a little bit more comprehensive, as some of the board members stated, to go back and look through the entire process of this. We hired a contractor to go through and do this with us. We are very supportive of trying to lower our cost. We just being so new, our Educational Facilities Master Plan and the capital team, are working to try to improve that. So we've gone to the state right now and worked on submitting a different plan this year for our capital, meaning that we've been focused on combining some of our projects and lowering our administrative cost by utilizing a different method at the state level so that our administrative costs would be lowered, and working with Senator Rosapep on the other bills to possibly lower our cost of construction as well.
Thank you. So, seeing no further, I would ask, so this bill, though, the HB 1438, there is a pending amendment on this bill?
No, there is not.
There is no pending amendment on this bill.
195.
So this bill is what
creates
it is.
a work group.
Got it. Thank you very much. Is there any further debate on this?
Chair, is it possible to vote on these separately? Or?
Yes, I was just going to recommend, without objection, that we start only with Mr. Murray's amendment. His amendment is to support HB 1438. Seeing no further discussion, would you call? Do you want to talk on this? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Grady.
So, just a point of clarification, Dr. West. The bill right now just being discussed. We're looking into this work, we're taking a deeper dive, is what you're saying, in a different approach to figuring out how to reduce cost. Is that still, or is that separate? This is not. Yes.
So this bill, as I understand it, and Shauna can certainly weigh in, is to establish a work group.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to you, there's already, conversations going on. There's a work group between some of the county council, county administration, and school system people about some of this work. It's the question of, I think here, of reviewing, as Dr. Watts said, the whole educational facilities master plan, as we think this is talking about, and make a different set of recommendations that has already been made and incorporated into our 6-year plan. the one on lowering costs and the way we do construction, that's the other bill we're talking about. And then there's also the not commission recommendations. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts on this. I think the committee put no position here because it's, I mean, my personal opinion is it's not really necessary to create a work group. We have a working group that talks about these issues.
I think there was some concern for staff about duplicating efforts, but I personally didn't want to oppose the senator's bill, so I reckon when Dimitri and I talked, we brought forward to you a recommendation for no position, just to let it see where it goes.
To your point.
Thank you. Seeing no further debate, should I try a voice vote? Let's call the roll.
It's the motion to amend House Bill, the position for House Bill 1438, Senate Bill 332, to support. Ms. Ahmed?
Aye.
Ms. Boston? No. Mr. Burrows?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks? No. Ms. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero-Scrady?
Aye.
Ms. Roach?
Aye.
Mr. Valentine? Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Dr. Wiseman? Dr. Eubanks?
Abstain.
9 ayes, 3 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you. That motion carries. We will support that bill. I will now move on to, yes, the other 3 bills. Sure, if that's what we're supposed to do, let's take them all together. Is there any further discussion about our positions on these, on the remaining 3 bills? Mr. Burrows.
Ms. Battle?
Yes.
I had a question about a piece of legislation that I was confused as to why it was not on the list. As you know, several years ago, the county executive paraded around the county referencing the casino money coming to the school system.
Mr. Burrows.
There have been 2 bills.
So I'm going to, we still will complete the legislative report. If this is on an item other than these 3, then is it, if it doesn't pertain to these 3, we'll get right back to this after the vote.
It's about a bill that I could amend into the legislative report if I so chose.
Yes, which you'll have an opportunity to do, but since that's not on the motion on the board, let's get this motion done, and then I'll come to you, and you can do it then, because we do have a motion on the floor, so let's take care of that. The legislative report will not be done, and I'll come right back to you. Anything else on this motion? Yes, go ahead.
For Senate Bill 779, is there some clarification why we opposed it, or an explanation?
Another
The
explanation
education.
about 779. I know you talked about that, Ms. Battle. Just could you reiterate for us, or Mr. Valentine?
Senate Bill 779? Yes. This bill alters the funding formula for direct education aid to schools through the Education Trust Fund. Based on our calculations, it would increase funding for Prince George's County Public Schools. However, Prince George's County Public Schools will be eligible for more funding because the bill removes capital project funding that's currently provided to the community college out of the Education Trust Fund. So it would basically, I don't know, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So it would give Prince George's County Public Schools more money, but it would also take money away from one of our partners, which is the community college. And so due to this adverse impact on the community college, we recommended opposing the bill.
Okay.
Seeing no further questions, I will put the vote before you to adopt the Policy Committee's recommendations on SB 779, 477, and 531. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no.
No.
Thank you. That motion carries. We'll move on to the rest of the legislative report. Mr. Burrows.
Ms. Battle, several years ago, the county executive promised the people of Prince George's County that the casino funding would go to the school system. A lot of people voted for that measure because they believed and they were told by the executive and others that additional money would come to the school system. Now we know that that was not true, and the school district did not receive the boatload of money that we were promised. There are two bills, one by I think the Democratic leadership to close that loophole, and there's another bill from the governor and the comptroller that would add an additional $3.4 billion to the school systems and an additional $1 billion for new school construction. Is there a reason that we're not taking a position on either bill that would close this loophole?
Can you tell me what the bill numbers are?
So the first bill is titled the Commitment to Education Act. It's Senate Bill I don't have the actual bill numbers in front of me, but they both essentially, like I said, the county executive said we would get all this money for, in addition, for slots and the casino. People in my district went out and voted for it because they believed that those additional resources would help the school system. We now know that the school district did not receive the additional funding that was promised. Both bills would close that loophole. They call it a lockbox. And so, you know, if we're not taking a position today, I would ask that you and Demetria.
The bills may be in the legislative report, so every bill doesn't come for a vote. There are some bills that we submit testimony on because of your legislative platform. So that's why I was asking you for the bill number, because I could look in the legislative report to see if it's something that she's already submitted testimony on.
And Mr. Burrows, I'll tell you, so we did not consider that. I mean, they were not brought to us as a committee when we met a week or so ago. We are meeting this Tuesday, and we could consider it. And if we do, you'll be available to come to that meeting, obviously present on opposition or support. But we will have a committee meeting this Tuesday, and I will speak with Demetria about whether that's something she would bring. But it was not brought to us to vote on, and that's why Ms. Bowder would not have had a position on it, even if she knew the number, because it was not brought to our committee. And I don't know whether Demetria had a bill to present, or whether it was finalized, or whether the sponsor wanted us. Oftentimes a bill will be sponsored, and the sponsor will say, please hold off on taking a position until they go through a process. But we did not take a vote on that, on any of those bills, to the last policy meeting, but there's a good chance that we may next Tuesday. And again, you're available, as anyone else in the public or on this board, to come and talk about that.
Yeah, I would appreciate the committee would take up those two bills. Those two bills could bring billions of dollars of revenue that was already promised to the school district and to the citizens. And so I'd appreciate if you guys would take that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the legislative report? Thank you. Seeing none, that concludes the legislative report. Thank you very much, Ms. Battle. And thank you, Mr. Valentine, for your leadership on the committee. It is now time for public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. Thank you, folks, for your patience as we get to this point in the agenda. I will note before we begin that you have been registered to speak in public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. The board will not address your comments. All registered speakers will have 3 minutes to make their presentation. At the sound of the buzzer, speakers may complete their final sentence only, please. And you may not relinquish any part of your speaking time to another individual, registered or unregistered. Please refrain from speaking directly to individuals and instead use titles. And please, of course, refrain from using profanity or derogatory terms. And guidance into these simple guidelines will help to move this process forward. We have one speaker for item 5.2, and then we have about 7 speakers on non-agenda items. So we'll start with speaker on item 5.2 on the agenda, Michelle Clark.
Oh, that helps.
Good
Thank you.
evening.
I'm here to speak to you about the budget that I've reviewed, the CEO's proposed budget, and there are a few items in there that I found that I would like you to reconsider some of the funding amounts for. The first one is the expansion of community schools. There was only $1.5 million in the budget for that, whereas there was $14.1 million for charter schools. In reality, the community school model would do a lot more to help our children in the pockets of poverty that we have throughout our county than charter schools will. So if you're looking at spending money in a way that's productive, that's going to help aid our students and their parents, you really need to look at putting more towards community schools. Also, restorative practices. As you guys know, we pushed you very hard to fund restorative practices last year. This year, I saw $33,000 in the budget. That's not very much money, especially considering the fact that MSEA recently did a study that showed approximately 65% of all police arrests in schools statewide occurred here in Prince George's County. So we're not meeting the needs of our students if we're having that many people arrested in our buildings. Some of the other things that we want you to look at is, or I want you to look at, is to expand the PAR program by an additional 2 PAR teachers, and of course to fully fund the negotiated agreements. I believe that is the way it is in the budget right now. I just want to make sure you protect that and make sure it does not become, well, it doesn't get cut when reconciliation comes around. We greatly do appreciate getting a step this year, and next year would have been nice if it had happened at the beginning of the school year, since that's when we start working. But we would like to see the makeup for the lost steps. That is still a big issue. I don't know if you realize it or not, but teachers who have left the county and return on step. We're 4 steps behind if we've been in the county and been loyal and been here. I would like to see the numbers as to what it would cost. I've been lobbying the county council members already to try and make sure that that does get funded at some point in time, and not only affects us in our current pay. I've told you before, personally, I have financial problems. We lost a member to suicide this year because of financial difficulties. And it also has a big historical hit on our retirement and the money that's being invested in that over the years. Please look at these issues as you're looking at the budget. We really need your help in making sure that your teachers feel more appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Our next speaker is Gabriel Walton. Is Gabriel Walton here? All right, our next speaker is Alexis Brown. Is Alexis Brown here? Speaking on support for students on the autism spectrum at Beltsville Academy, no? How about Ayo Kimathi?
My name is Ayo Kimathi. I'm a Prince George's County resident. Thank you for this opportunity to come and speak. Very recently, I discovered, or it was reported, that the Prince George's County School Board voted unanimously in favor of a Black Lives Matter initiative for a week during Black History Month. I'm assuming that the Prince George's County School Board did not know this, and I'm pretty sure that most of the parents and concerned citizens who are sitting here did not know that the stated, public, acknowledged goal of Black Lives Matter as it relates to educating Black children is to promote homosexuality and transgenderism as natural and normal acceptable behavior to children. It is a national initiative that they have publicly stated that their goals and objectives are doing nationally, specifically targeting black children. And in this particular case in Prince George's County, bypassing the rights of parents whose religious and cultural belief systems would not be in favor of their elementary school children being taught to accept transgenderism and homosexuality against the culture of them as black people, against their religious cultures in the church, bypassing them without parents being even informed and being taught that in their second, third, fourth grade classrooms. What I have here for anyone who wants confirmation of this fact, you can go to SaveBlackChildren.com. You can see it for yourself. I also have official Black Lives Matter handouts where they say that their objective is to promote transgenderism and homosexuality to our children, and you can see it on their agenda. What I would say is that I'm hoping and I'm assuming that the board did not know that this was what their real true objective is, and that the board would come out with something publicly to say, we weren't aware, we did not intend to bypass parents' rights to protect their children's sanity by allowing this kind of agenda into our school system. And in the event that the board did know that this was the objective, which I'm confident that the board did not know, I want to say, as a black man who is responsible for protecting the well-being of black men, women, and children, that myself and like-minded people like me definitively will not stand in Prince George's County or anywhere else in this country for this type of thing to be pushed on our children against our will. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robin Polite.
Good evening, everyone. I am 2250. I represent 2250.
Can you pull your mic
Speak
down?
right into the mic, please.
I represent 2250 clerical, the chapter, clerical chapter, and I've had the pleasure of connecting with 247 clericals. It would have been more, but I've learned from some of them that they were skeptic due to poor past relationships with PGC authorities. However, I created a survey, and half of the 247 clericals responded to the following. 85% are not able to fulfill their primary positions due to added duties over the past 15 years. 68% have fulfilled 2 positions since 1998, and I want you to keep that year in mind. 77% are not taking lunch or sometimes taking a lunch, and 75% are not receiving any compensation for overtime work, and 55% have been asked by the principal or APs to do the work without compensation. To support the survey, I obtained information indicating that there are approximately 20 elementary schools vacancies for clericals, 1 middle school, 4 high schools, and there was 3 others I wasn't sure where they fit at, and I had obtained that information from in October, so it could have changed since then. Clericals concerned with these vacancies, or HR is not fulfilling jobs in a timely manner, or principals are given too much control over their school-based budget. It seems to us that the HR has relinquished some of their responsibility to principals can be the issue to why vacancies are not fulfilled and clericals are overwhelmed without compensation. And as one who is representing the clerical chapter, we have been continuously still trying to get labor relations to the table with dates, and we've been trying to get that get those dates in November, and been asking for them prior to. Along with that, I have to support and say for our transportation workers, there is a RSP that has been presented to outsource our transportation workers. Now, to get back to that 1998 in reference to our student records, right now we are, as clericals, are just now starting to archive the student records from 1997 to 2002. We're in 2018. We are just now starting to microfilm grad records from 2013 to 2013, 14, and 15. It's sad because from the information I received, 158 schools out of the 205 schools that the information I received are doing this. That is more than half. That is more. 158 schools have to do this. And so we need some help, whether it's more money to help us to get this job done. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Keisha Chase.
Good evening. I'm coming out because for 2 years now I've been speaking out. My daughter goes to a high school in PG County, and I've been speaking out. My daughter has been sexually accosted by a member of the staff at the school that she goes to. She's been touched by a vice principal. I've come to these school board meetings time after time. I've spoken out on the corruption in the county. I've spoken out on the lies. I've spoken out on everything that comes to my attention and that I see. Because of that, my daughter is being retaliated on by one of her teachers. I have reached out. I have spoken. I have yelled. I have went to Facebook. I've sent emails. And this teacher is still doing exactly what she wants to. No one is doing anything. She is a 17-year-old senior who just got accepted to the college that she wanted to go to. And because of this teacher, and I have screenshots and I have emails of what my daughter's grade was at the close of second quarter report card on that Friday. Her grade was at 88%. My daughter makes A's and B's. My daughter's an IEP student. Okay, my daughter does competitions. She does well. She won. She's made it to finals. She does what she's supposed to do. This teacher, because of, I had to make a bully report on this teacher, okay? My daughter had 88%. We woke up, that was on that Friday, which was, I believe, the 26th of January. The 27th, on that Saturday, when I woke up, she gave my daughter a 55% in her class. I have screenshots. No one, only one person, and that's the associate superintendent, who I want to thank, and she knows who she is. She's the only one that's listening. But this teacher is able to get away with it, and nobody's doing anything. While we're so busy worrying about false graduation rates and all these types of things that's going on, and money missing and all this kind of stuff, and accepting money and all this kind of stuff, no one is thinking about these children. No one. I'm tired. I ask all the parents, it's time for you guys to stand up. I have been fighting. I have been fussing. It's obvious these panel of people and our CEO is doing nothing. They're not thinking about our children, only their self-gain.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Our next speaker is Teresa Dudley, president of PGCEA.
Good evening. Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." On Tuesday, February 20th, 2018, the PGCEA Board of Directors and Representative Assembly took a vote of no confidence in the current school board structure that the county executive is solely responsible for, which includes the CEO and school board leadership. We are calling upon the Maryland General Assembly to take immediate action to implement a fully elected school board for Prince George's County. On January the 16th, I witnessed the county executive, CEO, and the chair of the Prince George's County Board of Education present the status of PGCPS to the members of the Prince George's House delegation. As board members, You should be enraged that you were not given the chance to discuss or review the presentation. We tried to give this structure a chance, but the proof is that the structure is not working, and it is evident in the state and by the reputation of our schools. Morale is low, and our members are embarrassed and feeling very retaliated on. Since the county executive made that decision in 2013, tests in the General Assembly, test scores have not improved, and our buildings are still overcrowded and unsafe. At one school, I had 3 staff members hurt last week, and one of them I had to accompany to an urgent care. The county executive said publicly that student achievement was not the reason our system was taken over. Then what were the reasons? Our teachers teach every day for the sole purpose of student achievement. Teachers are overwhelmed, bullied by administrators, and morale is at an all-time low. No wonder there's a high teacher turnover. Our students are over-tested, and their social and emotional health is challenged every day. It is time for us to reclaim our schools. I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. The Assembly has also listed several concerns. I will list some of them for you, including the more 600 educators placed on administrative leave. I have a whole list of things, lingering maintenance issues, a lack of resources, and let's be real about it. The 3 school guidance counselors at Duval High School were thrown under the bus, placed on administrative leave, publicly admonished, and then their emails cut off because there was evidence in those emails saying that their directives came from the central office. You cannot continue this structure. It is wrong to throw people under the bus to try to keep the county executive in a position to run for governor. I ask you to return those teachers and those guidance counselors. Let's not have another witch hunt and place a whole lot of people on administrative leave like we've done previously.
Thank you.
And I ask you to support HB 196 so that we have a full repeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Melissa Dykes. Is Melissa Dykes here? All right, that's all I have on my list of registered speakers for this evening. So we will move on to our next agenda item for this evening, which is the budget consent agenda, and I will yield the floor to Dr. Maxwell for an introduction of items 4.1 through 4.5 under the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Eubanks. Members of the board, items 4.1 to 4.4 on the consent agenda requires board approval of proclamations commemorating the following in Prince George's County Public Schools during the month of March: Read Across America Day, History Day competition, National Irish American Heritage Month, and National Women's History Month. Item 4.5 requires board approval of the Prince George's County Public Schools Mental Health Initiative.
Thank you, colleagues. May I have a motion to approve items 4.1 through 4.5 under the consent agenda? Second. It has been moved and seconded to approve these items under the consent agenda. Ms. Ahmed.
Just a couple point of clarification. This mental health initiative seems really cool, and I didn't want it to go just under the radar, and I had a couple of questions about it. Under budget implication, it says special education Medicaid funds in the amount of $318,000. I just want to confirm those are locked federal funds, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that would mean that they would not take away from anything else in the budget.
Correct.
Okay. And then the 8 schools listed here have the transition program. Are there other schools that have that program that are not listed? No?
No, they're not.
Okay, that's good to know that all of the transition schools are listed in this MOU. Those are my couple of clarification questions. Thank you. And this does seem like a really awesome initiative for our students in the county. So thank you.
Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the comments of my colleague from
the 5th District. Very thankful for the administration bringing this program to District 7, North Forza Elementary, and Dr. Henry West Junior High School. One quick question. Of the identified staff in the resolution, do we know where those staff will be located? Will it be located central office or in the schools?
Because there's not enough to put at each of the schools that are listed here, there'll be central office, but they'll be assigned to work with those schools.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, I will put the vote before you. All those in favor of approving consent agenda items 4.1 through 4.5, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, my friends. That motion carries. I'll yield the floor now to Dr. Maxwell for an introduction of items 5.1 through 5.4 under the budget consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Eubanks. Members of the board, items 5.1 to 5.4 on the budget consent agenda requires board approval of the March 2018 expenditure requirements, the fiscal year 2019 Board of Education requested annual operating budget, E-rate installation of new network infrastructure, and the enterprise planning and budgeting cloud services implementation. Before you tonight for approval is my amended fiscal year 2019 operating budget. Over the last several years, I have proposed budgets that reflect what the school system needs to fulfill the promises of the strategic plan. I know my message has been heard and to a great extent acted upon. However, fiscal realities also must shape our budget request. Upon the recommendations of the board and the board's budget committee, I have reduced my budget proposal to align with expected revenues from all sources. Before you tonight is a revised budget proposal that reduces our overall request by $59.2 million. My revised budget of $2.05 billion focuses on employee compensation, student-based budgeting, charter school expansion, and critical program continuations. Please be reminded that state law requires this board to approve a budget balanced by state categories to be presented to the county executive by March 1st. I would also like to remind the board that we are barely midway through the fiscal year 2019 budget process. We are eagerly awaiting the budget recommendations of the county executive next month. A few months later, the county council approves our final budget amount. To produce a balanced budget for July 1, this board and my administration will undoubtedly have to make further adjustments in the coming months. We should have those discussions once there is a better understanding of our final budget picture. With this in mind, I ask the Board of Education to approve this budget request of $2,447,732,000 as presented to you tonight.
Thank you. Colleagues, without objection, I'm going to just go on ahead and take 5.02 and set it aside and ask for a motion to approve items 5.01, 5.03, and 5.04.
So move.
May I have a second? Second. You have a question about one of those, Rahila?
Just two or three clarification questions. On the E-rate, is the $5 million a year already budgeted for?
It's approximately $1 million a year for 5 years, so $1 million each year, and we get approximately, on an average, an 80% discount. So $1 million can say we can do about $5 million worth of work.
Okay, and is that already in the FY19
Yes, ma'am.
request?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Sorry.
And then for the enterprise planning and budgeting system implementation, Chief Pfister, is this the internal budget tool that we're looking to incorporate?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, and the funds for this are already in the requested budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just have one request can we be updated after the legs of the work have been complete? I just think it's super important work, and you've probably heard me talk about it like 5 billion times.
Absolutely.
But,
it's been a long, drawn-out process, but we're kind of starting to make progress. So
Okay.
I'll be glad to update you.
Thank you. And whichever way you deem fit for that to happen, whether that's report through the FAB committee with permission of the chair of the committee, or individually, whatever works. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. On this motion, Mr. Murray? On this motion before us?
Sorry, repeat that?
You're lit up. Is it for this
Oh.
motion before us?
No.
No, okay, thank you. Well then, I'm taking it that these are for the next motion, so I will move on and ask all those in favor of approving items 5.1, 5.3, and 5.4, please say aye. All those opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We'll move on to 5.02. I will start by yielding the floor to the chair of the FAB Committee, Ms. Boston, for a presentation and motion.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As the chair of the Board's Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee, I am proud of the work that the committee did in collaboration with the administration, and in particular with Chief Finance Officer John Pfister and his staff. With a focus on providing comprehensive support and high-quality education for all of our students and teachers, the FAB Committee participated in this process with the administration to ensure that the Board's fiscal priorities were considered and addressed. The budget you have here before you today highlights many of those priorities, including employee compensation, community schools, supports for our alternative schools, and PAR for our teachers. Colleagues, I ask that you take into account the hard and collaborative work of the FAB Committee and approve the budget before you today. Thank you.
You want to make a motion?
And I would like to make a motion that we accept, which is that,
5.02.
2.
It's been moved and seconded to accept item 5.02. Discussion, Mr. Burrows.
I had a question for Chief. On the budget document, God, I have so many documents in front of me. It mentions
Which one, so we could all make sure you're...
the board action summary.
Board, thank you.
It references $30 million for high-performing workforce.
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what that amount means?
What that is that's the amount for negotiated agreements that are already settled and agreed upon. That is the amount that's in our budget funding those agreements.
So these are funding the agreements that have already been negotiated and voted on and approved.
Yes, sir.
And what is the percentage increase out of this $30 million for teachers or for PGCEA?
It varies by union and
for PGCEA.
I believe it was a mid-year step. And then for next year, it was a step in November as well.
And the step generally represents 3%?
Approximately, yes, across their scale, yes.
Okay. And so I'm happy that that's the current level. I'm happy that there's a start, the 3%. I believe that we can do more in this current budget, colleagues. And so I would like to move to amend the current budget to add an additional 29.2 million to the budget, which would equate to an additional 4% for our teachers. If you look at our neighboring jurisdictions, Washington, D.C., namely, I know that we're losing some of our very best and brightest teachers to D.C. every single year. And if we don't properly compensate our educators, they will leave us. And if we are serious about retaining and supporting the current workforce, then we must work toward putting our employees on their proper step. And so I'd like to move to add 29.2% for our teachers in this current budget on top of that 3%. So that's my motion.
Second.
So the move is seconded. Are you recommending that we add $29.2 million in addition to our ask, or that we add $29.2 million and cut it from someplace else?
Mr. Chair, this current budget is over $2 billion. I'm
just trying to get clarity.
Well, if you allow me to finish, I will clarify. This current budget is over $2 billion. I believe that we could find an additional $29 million and the current $2 billion budget.
Thank you. So the key is, your request is not to increase our budget request by $29 million, but to find $29 million within the existing budget.
Yeah, I think I've been very clear. We have.
I'm trying to make clear so we could have a very clear discussion about what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Colleagues, I seconded this motion first and foremost as an educator myself, as the only current educator, K-12 educator on our school board. We, as a board, have to prioritize our teachers, and we can't just say it, we have to show them in our actions. As Board Member Burrows said, our teachers are overworked, they're underpaid. Many of them stay out of loyalty to our students and to our county, but it's not fair to ask them to when they're being so dramatically underpaid, not just compared to DC, but to jurisdictions neighboring us all around in Maryland. We have over a $2 billion budget. The ask, I believe, is a 3.7% increase over last year alone. So essentially, you would be allocating that same percentage increase to our teachers. And if we keep growing our budget from the top down, our central office keeps getting bigger. The share of our budget going to teacher salaries getting smaller. It's no wonder that we can't keep up with teacher salaries. And we might not be the richest jurisdiction in the region, but that means we need to be doing more to support teachers, not less. It needs to be the first thing funded in our budget, not last. And so I enthusiastically second Board Member Burrows' motion to add a 4% increase to negotiate, to reserve, to allocate to our teachers for salaries.
Ms. Ahmed.
I just want to second what Mr. Burrows and Mr. Murray have expressed. I think there's value in our people, and our people are our power. And so I enthusiastically also support this amendment.
Ms. Boston.
Mr. Pfister, on the for the compensation piece on what Mr. Burrows had made a motion for, do we have money set aside, additional money set aside for compensation? I know we cannot say what that amount is because of the prior, I think, that we have out there now from negotiating in public. We have to be careful about that. But I want to know from you, is there additional money set aside for, I know you can't give us that amount because of that?
Yes. We have to anticipate settled negotiated agreements that have not been finalized yet. So there is the ability to be able to, hopefully, once the amount is known and ratified, we would adjust the budget to make sure that we have adequate resources to fund our negotiated agreements.
So I'm not sure if you're answering my question.
Ms. Boston, can I ask that you all be careful with this discussion?
Right.
Because we had a judgment against us.
Correct.
From the Public School Labor Relations Board. We were accused of negotiating in public. So I just want us to be really careful with this discussion, if we could.
Yeah, I'm just asking, do we have additional funds that we have set aside, that when we come back from reconciliation, we might be able to?
There's a small reserve for compensation for unsettled agreements.
Great, thank you.
And this board did vote and approve a negotiated agreement for, I think, 2 years with PGCEA. And I think we finished with most of our other bargaining units, which is the legal requirement.
So just for clarity, 2 years, when does that, when do we open up negotiation again then with PGCA?
Ms. Battle?
We finalized PGCA, so it's a 3-year agreement. It was a 2-year agreement for 2018 and 2019 we addressed.
So we'll open next year?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments of those who come before me. I'm probably the only one on the board who was actually a member of PGCA at one given time as a former educator in this system. It's hard to sit home or in the audience and wonder why or how this board could vote against increasing the salaries of our educators to give them everything they deserve and earned, especially when you hear someone on the board say that we're losing teachers to Washington, D.C. You would think that if you didn't know the full story, that in Washington, D.C., they negotiated, or not negotiated, they have a system where majority of the teachers don't have any rights to negotiate whatsoever, that many of them are on year-to-year contracts and could be removed from their positions at any given time because the rights that are given to teachers in this system, teachers in Washington, D.C. do not have. And so they're able to pay them more for that reason. At the same time, we make tough decisions on this board. If I was a teacher sitting here, I would also question where the money is going if I'm not getting it. But as I sit on this side, I understand that I would like to give every teacher everything they deserve, every administrator. I would like to have every school funded. I want every school to have a turf field. I want every classroom to have a reading specialist. I want everything that you want. I want for my wife, who's an administrator in the system, for my children who are teachers, who are students, and for every teacher who I advocate for. But we make tough decisions. And unless we can make a decision on where the money would come from and that funding cut wouldn't adversely affect educators in the classroom, then it's hard for me to vote for this. As someone who has taught and is currently an educator in the higher education system, I know just simply giving an increase in salary to an educator while at the same time cutting costs somewhere else, that could make the working conditions more difficult, make it harder to educate in the classroom, and make the environment more stressful at the same time giving a salary increase is not what educators want either. I'm around just as many educators as the next person and maybe more than rest. And funding and a salary is very important. It's incredibly important. But there are other things that are just as important as well. And so unless we can figure out between now and then reconciliation where to find that funding, it is hard for me to vote for that. Again, I am all for supporting our educators and making sure they have a livable wage that truly reflects the work that they do on a tireless basis, waking up early and staying late, because I see it every day, and I see it every night. I'm going to go home and I'm going to see it. But the question is, where is the money going to come from? And let's talk about that. We could talk about it between now and reconciliation, but also to make the case that any of those cuts is not also going to adversely affect teachers, support we give to teachers, students in the classroom, or those who support those teachers in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me chime in and just back up again what Mr. Valentine pointed out, and just remind our colleagues that we asked hundreds of questions written and got written responses to the board. We had, I don't know, a dozen or so meetings of the FAB committee. We had 3 public hearings. We had 3 budget work sessions. And particularly given the fact that this request isn't to add $29 million to our ask, but to find it, that I would just challenge folks that once we pass the budget and once we get back to reconciliation, that these colleagues actually come and spend some time with the FAB committee trying to figure out where, if we want to get this money, where it might come from. There is indeed an opportunity to do that. And so I would recommend board members that we focus on passing the budget as is, and then if there's a compelling way, once we have to balance a budget, that we can cut money and add it to any other places. That discussion can be had at FAB. There'll be many more meetings and other public hearings in which we can have that meeting. I will now go to Ms. Page.
Mr. Burrows, can I make a friendly amendment to add $29.2 million instead of try to find it from anywhere, or at least specify where we would pull it from? I mean, it's a friendly amendment. I'm not making a motion.
I think the friendly amendment that I would be open to, I was intending to make subsequent motions that would impact the other labor partners after this motion, but I guess what I would be open to, and if Board Member Murray would agree, we can just include all bargaining partners in this current 29 million, instead of making separate motions for 2250 and SEIU after. If David's open to that, I would be open to just say, make it more broad to satisfy Shauna's concern, and just say for collective bargaining agreements, if David's okay with that.
Yep.
Okay.
But that doesn't answer your question.
So would we be trying to figure out where we would pull from, or will it be in addition to the 29 million?
You know, the reality is that whenever we want to create a new office, or whenever we want to give out raises arbitrarily in central office, we never have this sort of discussion. And so we need to cut. And those cuts are okay, especially when we have departments with duplication, especially when we are spending money on programs that do not work. And so if we add it on, realistically, after reconciliation, we'll have to shave it right back off.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to do is embed this into the budget that we intend to pass in June.
So is it possible to add guidelines from where we do not want to cut? Because if it's just up in the air saying cut from somewhere, my concern is that programs or money that is set aside for different programs currently that is needed will get cut rather than areas that you may desire from it to get cut.
That makes perfect sense. What I can tell you is that when we lost all of the money from Head Start, 6.5 million, we magically found it. And so I know that we have money in the $2 billion. If it would make, I would urge the administration not to cut or not to do anything that would impact class sizes, not to do anything that would impact special ed, and to look within their budget to make this work.
Okay, so if this motion passes from the administration, I would request to be informed of where or what will be cut prior to it actually being cut, so that I can make an informative decision, please.
So, and you make a good point, and I'm trying to figure out, just for the sake of process, I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench, but this feels not quite like it can be in order to do it this way without, I mean, I don't think we can pass a budget saying we're just going to find $29 million and just take it out of someplace else and figure it out. We can't really do that, I don't believe, until or unless the administration comes back, and particularly because the money is in different categories and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So tell me, let me just ask a question. If we said pass a budget and just with $29 million and you have to find it from somewhere, how would you deal with that?
I would tell you that I don't believe that I don't think that it is the way, as you started out your comment, the way to do this at all. As I said, we have to balance this budget and submit it by next Thursday, I think it is, to the county executive, balanced by category. So we can't just leave it wide open and say, here we're going to put another 29 million into, salaries and compensation without finding offsets for it somewhere else in the budget. I mean, you can't balance your budget unless you find those offsets. So I think to change this at the last minute like this, as opposed to maybe having a conversation as you suggested through FAB, I just don't think it is a good practice to come on the, last 12th hour, it's not even the 11th hour, to do this. But if you would like us to, if you'd like to, postpone this or something, I mean, you guys, the budget's before you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Quinteros-Grady.
So this is my fourth year with this, in this position. And I've worked very hard to try to understand the complexity of our district, that is large. We're the second largest district in Maryland. Trying to understand how we got here It's been always something that I try to educate myself in, knowing that there was some really hard decisions made. Was it 2011, 12, 2010, possibly a freeze. And so we find ourselves trying to play catch up, if you will. And it's been really tough. And we get the diversity of the needs that we want to. Well, there's also the demand from all other areas. I think that was to Ms. Ahmed's point around programming and concerns that things that are also benefiting the students aren't cut. I think it's really difficult to. I think Mr. Curtis said something earlier to work out where to try to figure out, in not a more concrete way, where to cut or where to have this budget, because there's the FAB committee that meets regularly in order to look at these issues and discuss. We also have had a board retreat in which we talked about where should we cut, where should we do different things, and I'm just always taken back at the last minute trying to make decisions as if this could just be, done like that. So I know that when I first came on board, there was an initiative, which actually PGCA was on board, and it was not a very controversial issue around increasing taxes, and there was a specific amount. I don't know if you can correct me, Mr. Rhodes. I don't know if it was 14 million. What was that going to do that was going to allot specific amount for the teachers at that time?
Well, unfortunately, I can't remember the specific amount, but I can tell you that the goal that we identified was to to increase our teachers' average pay to be towards the top in the region instead of towards the bottom in the region. We used, if you remember at that time, the Washington Area Boards of Education study. There was the MSDE teacher salary study. Board Member Ms. Grady, as you remember, there was a lot of debate about whether or not the right things were being used in public and such, and ultimately that particular provision the amount of money did not pass. There was a 4% increase. I think that raised about $35 million, of which is currently in our base budget. So that was the plan that was submitted. Right? Yeah, that was the plan that we submitted based off of the request.
And the president of the union at that time was Mr. Haynes. I can't remember, Mr.
I think Haynes. At the time.
Yes. I just remember because I remember that was a time where we were all trying to fight for the same thing.
Yes.
And I came on board, however controversial that was, not popular. And I know that at that point, some of my colleagues here did not support that, and I understand. However, I was supportive because I wanted to make sure that the teachers from that point on could get what they wanted. We could have done that if there would have been a lot more drive and just attention to this issue 4 years ago. So is disingenuous to act like right now is the only time that we've, in my opinion, with all due respect, this issue to me has been very important. And so I just wanted to present that because also there's a Kerwin Commission report that's going to come before us with some preliminary report is out, but there will be probably more of the price tags that come along with that in the fall. And I assure you that what's going to be found or is going to be said is what we already know, is that our school systems are underfunded. And I think that it's important that we share the responsibility, not just us locally, but I think that it has to be everyone that has to pay attention to this issue, to be fair. But it's going to be interesting because I think we're going to end up where we were 4 years ago. And that's just my opinion because of just all of the different things that I've looked at that are prioritized or sort of recommended in that report. We're going to have to also, it's going to take that report, I guess, to inform people where we already know that Maryland or schools in general are underfunded. It's going to be more specifics around what it will need to do. And I'll be willing to do whatever needs to happen if I'm still on this board in that time. And hopefully that we get more community support and we can be a board of full force to, at that point, raise our voices and make sure that the communities as a whole and the profession of teaching is professionalized and that everyone can respect that for what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. See no one else for round one. I'll go to round two. Mr. Burrows.
I'm okay for right now.
The vote before you. Ms. Ahmed.
Vote on the amendment or vote on the entire five?
No, we were just going to do the amendment.
Okay, then I'm good.
So I am very honest in saying I don't know that this is doable. I don't know that this amendment, but I will put it before the board that the motion before you is to put $29.2 million in compensation reserves and cut in other parts of the budget to find it.
Mr. Chair, just point of order. This is not different than what happened 2 years ago when there was a motion on the floor to add math and reading specialists in lowest performing schools, and the board voted to do it. After the vote passed the first time, the administration then went to the back and figured out where they would cut from, and then there was a second vote where the lawyers switched their legal opinion mid-meeting. So it's not unusual, and we've done this before.
Yeah, so what I would assume, Mr. Burrows, that's a good point, that if we do this, I'm not going to ask the administration tonight to find $29.2 million, but they might have to, and we might have to then reconvene before March 1st in order to have another vote once they find it.
Yeah.
So yeah, something like that is I think,
Mr. Chair,
feasible.
And Mr. Burr, you remember how much that was 2 years ago? I just can't recall how much
it was
we
a
asked
lot
them.
less than 29. No.
But
It was probably.
Was it less than 2 or 3 million?
Yeah, it was probably around then. So I would agree with Dr. Eubanks' assessment that we could come back before March 1st because our teachers are worth coming back.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we had a fair comparison between 29 million
That's
and
the
2
point
million.
of order. That's been the motion. I will ask Ms. Wilson to please call the roll.
Certainly. Ms. Ahmed.
Aye.
Ms. Boston.
No.
Mr. Burrows.
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, ma'am.
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez.
No.
Mr. Murray. Ms. Quinteros Grady.
No.
Ms. Roach.
Abstain.
Mr. Valentine. Mr. Wallace.
Abstain.
Dr. Wiseman. Dr. Eubanks.
No.
4 ayes, 6 nays, 2 abstentions, sir.
Thank you, colleagues. That motion fails. Mr. Murray, you have, no. Mr. Burrows.
Dr. Maxwell, ultimately the budget is a document about should reflect how we're going to move our district forward. And you referenced the strategic plan when you were reading your opening statement. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the SAT scores. In 2013, they were at, let's see, they were, Lord, I can't even read my own handwriting. They were 1,207 was the average, and in 2016, it was 1,185. There are 4 commitments that you outlined on the website. One is that the SAT average will meet or exceed state averages. Every single year since you've been here, SAT scores have gone down. Can you explain to me what in this budget will reverse that trend?
I can turn it over to my instructional people, I think, but I would say in general, the additional funding for our budget by strategic plan category is here, and there is a whole document that I think indicates what the things inside these numbers in these categories spell out. And I think you have that board book and have been in at least some of the work sessions and discussions that we've had. But Dr. Golson, if you'd like to.
Yes, I'll speak on SAT. Just so you know, we didn't add additional funds on top of the base to support it. We do have funds built into our existing budget for teaching and learning that support SAT. And just want to reiterate that when we changed the component or composition of the new SAT, what we did do was revise the curriculum and then began a training process to make sure that all teachers who are teaching the SAT prep class understand the content for both mathematics and English, so that the students can do better on the assessment. In addition to that, we do provide support after school and through a summer program to assist students with SAT as well.
And has that been taking place over multiple years?
You mean, what do you mean by multiple years?
What you just said, is that something that's new that's going to happen in this budget, or is this something that we're
No,
currently doing?
It started last year, this year, and of course we will continue. We will always evaluate our current processes, and if we feel that it's not working, go back and make changes and then continue to implement. But we didn't ask for additional funds because it's already in our base.
Okay, I guess, Dr. Maxwell, if what you're currently doing is not having a positive impact on the scores, did you consider adding additional resources since that's one of your goals?
So I think we've had this discussion before, Mr. Burrows. I don't do this independent and by myself. I don't sit here and write the whole budget by myself. The Division of Teaching and Learning and all of the folks that have responsibility there make their recommendations on what it is they think they need, and then we come together as a team and talk about the different things as we try to bring a budget home at the right amount. And so I would say the Department of Teaching and Learning, I believe, is they're the area that made the decision that what we have in place is adequate for moving forward.
Okay, your second thing that's on the website is the graduation rate. It says 90% of students will graduate on time. Is there any additional resources in this proposed budget that would contribute to the system graduating students on time in an ethical manner?
I don't believe so, but I know that we just approved a contract with our credit recovery programs. This board did about a month ago, I think. And that's the change. Other than that, we are still using the early warning system. We're still using the credit recovery work. We're still, doing the things that we have been doing to try to improve those outcomes.
Well, I hope we're not doing them in the same way. My last question goes to something that I've asked you about repeatedly, and that's special education. I know that you're adding millions to the budget for athletic directors to reduce their caseload. And persistently, I've asked you to consider lowering the caseload for our special educators. Has that taken place?
Actually, let me speak to that because I just met with Dr. Mason and Ms. Bowman last week, where we actually looked at the number of teachers we have assigned to all of our high schools and what courses they're teaching and how many students they have assigned to them. One of the things that you will see effective July 1 for the upcoming school years for each school will be placed on the special education website is what is the per teacher student ratio for caseload, so that it's very transparent about what each school has, how many special education students they have, how many teachers have been assigned to that school, and how many students are on their caseload, so that we can dispel the myth potentially of the uneven inequities in caseload. At the same time, though, we did find that we do have some cases where we have some special educators who we've paid for through our department to be assigned to a school for a class load, and they're not necessarily teaching special education students. And so we are going back to make those corrections, making contacts to schools, and making sure that they are placed back into the classroom.
Mr. Burrs, on the recommendations of the FAB committee, the athletic directors are not in the reconciliation before you tonight.
Oh, good. I'm happy that they did that. I guess, Dr. Maxwell, would you be open to, and I saw that there's a $500,000 audit for the graduation rates, and I'm hoping that we won't have that entire package. Was that also?
Mr. Burrows, there was
In the reconciliation you have, it has also been reduced also, the documents you were provided today.
Right. Well, I guess my point is, would you be open to adding money in the budget to audit special ed?
I think that MSD already audits special education, and I think that Dr. Golson wants to comment.
Yes, MSDE does audit special education in multiple areas. For example, we were audited in our transportation compliance piece, and we actually now are in compliance. So they do monitor multiple components, and our team stays in constant contact with MSDE. So are you, like what do you need in terms of an audit that you don't feel that MSDE is already auditing us for?
Well,
auditing us
we
for?
know all of MSD audits are not thorough. We know that. And so I guess my concern is this. There's not a week that goes by that I don't meet a parent that says my child's IEP is not being properly fulfilled. And if caseload isn't the problem, I'm trying to find the problem. And I'm trying to resolve that problem by virtue of the budget. I believe that Dr. Mason and her team are doing a wonderful job at the very top. However, when I go into schools and I speak to special educators and I speak to parents and I speak to students that have IEPs, it is very clear to me that we're not meeting those needs. And so I want an audit or review or add additional resources. Whatever you recommend, I'm willing to support. But what I am not going to tolerate is special ed, is us not doing everything that we need to do for our special needs students.
I agree. So what I would like to recommend is that allow me to meet with the team to come up with a plan that won't cost us $250,000, to do an initial review of what processes we have in place that'll help us to figure out ways to monitor the instructional program at the school level. And if we feel like we don't have the capacity to monitor and make sure that the implementation of IEPs are done, then I have no problem coming back to the table to request that we add into our budget a process that will allow us to do that externally.
And I can tell you money's not a problem. We have $2 billion and we spend it all different types of ways. This is worth spending it on.
Ms. Ahmed.
So the board action summary, which was posted online about 4 hours ago, shows that we're requesting $2.047 billion instead of $2.106 billion. That means that sometime between the last budget work session and this meeting, $59 million was removed, and that was based on the recommendation from administration and the FAB committee. My issue with that is that because we were not formally informed of these changes before the posting on board docs 4 hours ago, I was shorted. I feel shorted of my ability, and I feel like we as a board were kind of shorted of our ability to do our homework. And colleagues, you know how much I value doing my homework before coming to board meetings. So consequently, I don't know if I agree with all of the recommendations that are being presented in front of me. And my understanding was that administration would come before the FAB committee and with a prioritized list to prepare us for reconciliation at reconciliation time, not now. And maybe it was that miscommunication. And although I understand the spirit of what is happening in terms of requesting the amount that we may expect to get, I don't know that we should suddenly change our process now. It just seems quick and non-transparent, and I have a problem with that. I mean, talk about change at the last minute. And I think that I also want to point out the difference between, in my opinion, the difference between Mr. Burrows' motion and the administration committee recommendation is that Mr. Burrows' motion was based on several conversations and testimonies before this board, and the $50 million changes to the budget before us come after one committee meeting. So these are all, I'm being completely honest, and these are just all my thoughts flowing through. But all of this just sits very uneasily with me, and I think we need to amend this to be smoother next year.
Ms. Boston.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that these revisions was on here before 4 hours ago. In fact, Ms. Ahmed and Mr. Burrows, I think at our retreat, at the board retreat, and at, I think, a couple of the board budget hearings, we talked in length about the fact that we needed to present a more realistic budget. We asked the administration, there was numerous conversations about that, to bring back a budget that they thought was more realistic when we sent to the county council and to see the county exec that we think that we would actually be able to get funded. The administration at the FAB meeting, they presented at our retreat. We offered, and we got the notes, a lot of things that we wanted to see revised or whatever, and you participated in that retreat for 2 days. And the administration came back to the FAB committee. We addressed that. They had cut a lot of stuff. With the back and forth, the FAB committee sat down with them. We talked about some of the things that we wanted to add back to the, and that's a public meeting, so you, at any time, and it's posted, so it's not a secret. That was not a secret meeting that you could have participated, or any board member could have participated in that meeting. We sit down here and we went back and forth with administration. We came up with something. We added a lot of stuff back that they had cut. And that we felt that we wanted to, that this board, we wanted to make sure that our board, this board's priorities is what we added back, were also reflected in this budget. And I think that's what we have here today. Special education was added back to that budget by the FAB committee. That was on there as well. We cut the athletic directors' positions, and most of the things I think that they took out, we put back, and we made some revisions to them to make sure that it was, we figured that when we sent it over to the county council and it could be passed. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarify the fact that this was not a last minute, and that every board member had an opportunity to put input into this. Thank you.
If I may.
I see you. You're on the next round.
Thank you.
But I'm going to kind of jump in as well and point out a couple of other things too. I think Ms. Boston's absolutely right. Lack of transparency is the last thing I would say, given we talked about this at every public hearing and spent a full day on it at the board at the retreat. And so when the administration came to us, there were a couple of things that they did. One of them, we got to be transparent about this, because we said, we know that there are priorities of this board that required new investments of funds. But if we just looked at the cost of doing business and program continuations, it would have taken up the entire budget. So we told the administration to work harder. They did so by dipping into our fund balance, which they weren't happy about, and I know there's some folks who are concerned about that, and by finding about $10 million to put into new investments, which, given that this is a realistic budget, and we're able to put $10 million of new investments into programs, alternative education supports, the Teacher Academy, community schools, Healthy Start Breakfast, higher achievement, graduation software for students, restorative practices, special education staffing, increase in peer assistance and review, security staffing and equipment upgrades, transportation bus locator application for parents. Ooh, I'm going to love that one. Pest control and the graduation audit are all new commitments on top of everything that we're doing. And to be able to have done that, I think is a significant achievement to this. The only other thing I will add, colleagues, is this is not the end of the process. Once we get a reconciled budget, we can come back and have this debate again, and we can decide if folks can feel, now that we have the amount of money that we actually have, we can debate with one another. I think we should cut this in order to pay for that. That process, we still have another shot at the apple at this. So again, I would recommend that we go forward and approve this proposed budget. I don't see anyone else for round one, so I'll go to round two. Ms. Ahmed.
Sure. I just wanted to, I hear you, Ms. Boston, and I was there at the board retreat, but as I recall at the retreat, we had requested a prioritized list. Not necessarily, we did not necessarily have the documentation before us, and I was looking back just to be sure that I was making sense and I wasn't saying something that was untrue, but in my email, it shows that I got the Board of Education requested annual operating budget board action summary was uploaded, or at least the notification was sent to me at 4:23 p.m. today. And so for me, it puts me in a frazzle-dazzle mode of trying to figure out, is this what I want to fund? And it's difficult for me as an individual to do my due diligence when it comes to that. I would have loved also to make it to the FAB committee meeting. I had every intention to, but I was off at work, on work travel at that time. So I just wanted to make it clear that this is the perspective that I'm coming from at that time, or at this time.
Thank you. I see no more speakers, so I will put the vote before you to approve item 5.2 under the budget consent agenda. Given, I know it is a consent agenda, but given the amount of discussion, I'm going to go on ahead and do this by calling the roll.
Certainly. Ms. Ahmed?
No.
Ms. Boston?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows?
For the students and staff at the school district, no.
Ms. Eubanks? Yes. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
No.
Ms. Quintero-Scrady? Oh, she's not here. Ms. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine? Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Dr. Wiseman? Yes. Dr. Eubanks?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero-Scrady? Motion to approve item 5.2.
Yes.
Eight ayes, 4 nays, sir. Eight ayes, 4 nays.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. That motion carries. We have no second readers, so I'll yield the floor to Dr. Maxwell for an introduction of items 8.1 and 8.2 under new business first readers.
Thank you, Dr. Eubanks. Members of the board, items 8.1 and 8.2 require board approval as first readers. I just presented 8.1 and 8.2. You need a motion to accept.
Have a second?
Second.
Do we need to call a roll? We can just do voice vote on this? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So then that takes us to 9.0, follow-up items. Colleagues, follow-up items from the February 1st, 2018 board meeting and February 6th, 2018 budget work session are posted in board docs. So I don't need a motion on that? Okay. So I need motion to approve actions taken in executive session.
So moved.
Okay, colleagues. So we just about ready to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, I want to, for the record, get the vote count on the budget was not quite right. Was it?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can I verify a vote?
You absolutely vote. We
Ms.
want you to do that.
Hernandez. Ms. Ahmed, Mr. Burrows, and Mr. Murray. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 9 ayes, sir, and 3 nays.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And we approved items taken in executive session already, I assume? All right. So, colleagues, my entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. It has been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Thank you. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everybody.